Glenn, thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule as we approach season to have a look at some of your star horses that you've got going into the season. We, just to let you know on how we sort of do this in routine, we sort of take a little bit of a walk down memory lane with regards to yourself, your career, and then touch on the season you've just had and the season going forward. So firstly, obviously we're sitting here at beautiful Woodhill. For our viewers that don't know, this is your private training facility. You're not at a centre like Milnerton or Philippi as most of the other Cape trainers are. You're at Woodhill, which is, in all honesty, one of the finest training establishments in the world, one of the most picturesque that I've seen anyway. And thanks for having us out here. The first thing obviously everybody is thinking at looking at this beautiful lake is how many laps do you swim every morning as part of your fitness
As you can
regime?
see, I just paddle.
Good man, good man. Glenn, tell us, how did you very first thoughts remember getting into racing? What was that catalyst that got you involved? Not just as someone who knew that racing was happening at Kenilworth on the weekends or whatever. What was your first into the actual background of the sport?
Look, I mean, we were born and bred around horses. In fact, I was born in a racing stable at Newmarket in Alberton. And my dad rode a horse called Russian Glen, and he phoned up my mom and he said, listen, we're changing the kid's name. If we haven't registered him yet, instead of Sean, we're going to call him Glen after the colt called Russian Glen. So that was my start or my introduction to racing. And then, of course, we ran around the yard as kids growing up and watching my dad work. He was a trainer, and it was just amazing. But I always wanted to be the show jump in the family. Come, let's go. I just wanted to be the show jump in the family, and I really loved show jumping. And I got into the academy, and at the 11th hour, my dad said, look, you're going to be a big jockey, and he said, you're going to battle with your weight. Why don't you look at training? I said, I'm not interested in training. I'll be the show jumper. But I went down to Clarewood Park, and they had the Group 1 weight for age mile, and then walked Wild West, and I saw him, and I just said, jeepers creepers. I mean, I wish to God I could get a horse like that. And he was almost like animated with smoke coming out of his nose and 2 grooms, and he was bouncing around like that. And then I looked at all the people inside the parade ring, and I just loved the way they dressed. All the gentlemen were in ties, and some of them wearing hats, and all the ladies all turned out immaculately with hats. I said, that's where I want to be, inside the ring, not outside looking in. Yeah. That was my first real time I said, I want to get involved in racing. And my first job was with, I went to the army, and after my 2 years I came out. I actually wanted to travel a bit, and I wanted a job just for a short while, and I got a job with Trevor Lang. And that ended up being a 3-year stint, and then I went to Rolf Rixon and served my 7-year apprenticeship with him, and then ran Clodagh Shaw's satellite yard, and then going on to my own. And yeah, it was a big step for us because we never had horses really. I remember phoning all the breeders and asking them, have you got any horses that you haven't sold? And we put together a little catalogue and we auctioned them at Milnerton. And out of the 15 that were there, I think we placed 3 or 4, the breeder gave us 1. And out of them came a horse, he was by a rampaging native, but he could gallop. He won his first start by 4 and chipped a fetlock. He won his second start by 5 and chipped the knee. Oh. And he won his third start by 6 and he chipped the other knee. So he had terrible bone issues, but he could run like hell. And that was the start. And then we just went from there and just carried on working. And Kathy resigned from her job and backed me up. And they say behind every successful man there's a woman, and I've got to say she's done a great job.
Of course, yeah. People who know you know that Kathy is integral to the running of the business. So tell us, Woodhill, how did that come about? How did you spot the place? How did you decide? What was the thought process within the family? Obviously, it's a big step taking on the size of a project like this and the costs that come with running a private farm. So, what was the selection with staying away from a training centre and coming out here?
Well, I was at Rolf Rixon's farm for 7 years, and then we trained at Milnerton. And when Rolf decided to retire, I went back to Callaby Stables, and Neil and Maureen Smith, our English clients and very, very close friends, used to come out every Friday night for a Friday roast, family roast, and they absolutely loved it. And the one day he said, listen, it's like running the gauntlet getting into Philippi at night. We were a bit scared, we didn't want to tell you, but
it's even worse now.
Yeah, exactly, and that was 21 years ago. He said, can't you find a place and I'll set you up? And that's what he did, but it took 2 years to find Woodhill. We looked long and hard. We went down the west coast, we went inland, and we looked everywhere. And eventually I came up to, we weren't actually going to buy this farm in particular. Oh, we got lovely coffee.
There we go, thank you. Part of the fantastic service at Woodhill. Thank you very much.
We found this place, and actually we're going to buy a feed lot, 2 lots up there. There wasn't a tree on it, and I went and had a cup of tea with Fastfontein with Cole, and Cole said, why don't you buy the farm next door? We could walk the babies over. And we laughed, I said, is it for sale? He said, everything's for sale at the right price. And I drove up here and I met Van der Neetling, and yeah, that's how we ended up buying the farm. And I worked out where we could put the tracks and where we could put the stables, and before you knew it, we were building, and yeah, and it's 21 years in October.
Yeah, fantastic. And Glenn, before we touch on your last season, was a fantastic season for you, we'll get to that, but obviously career highlights. I mean, we, as in the racing public, know you shooting to prominence more so in the Princess Victoria and Big City Life days. I think that's, you know, you got hold of 2 really, really good horses, and obviously Big City Life was a big one for yourself and your family. I mean, he was a horse close to your heart, and of course he won what was then the Vodacom Durban July, which obviously is a big thing for any trainer's career. So just take us through Big City Life. You know, I won't say when you bought him as a yearling, because you'll elaborate on that, when he was bred here at the farm. And Princess Victoria, just to give us a bit of a history on those 2.
Well, you know, when we came, look, we bred Big City Life here, and we had 2 colts born that year. We had Big City Life and we had a Captain L. And the morning, I always, the cover jab, we send them away to fall down. And I got a call saying, listen, you know, 2 beautiful colts. And then 2 hours later, 3 hours later, they said, look, unfortunately, the one colt has died. Something happened to his umbilical cord, and it was coming through. I was just, oh, please don't let it be the Captain L.
Yeah.
And anyway, the results was, you know, be careful what you wish for, because the Captain L colt died and the other colt was Big City Life. But it was weird. I got back from the tell and I just said to my team, I said, I don't know how we're going to survive this season. You know, Justin Snaith's got, you know, buying power. You know, Candice Bass has got the buying power. Brett, I said, we don't have really the buying power. And how are we going to, you know, take them on? And my assistant at the time was Adele. She said, well, let's have a look at what you got here, because you got some smart on race horses. And the one was a little filly that Gary Player bred and kept a share in, and Peter de Buyck bought the other half. That was Lady Windermere. And that was
Group 1 winner.
She was the same year as Big City Life, so they both were 3-year-olds unraced, 2-year-olds turning 3, and between them they won 7 Group 1s in one season, so that was amazing. And then Princess Victoria came the following year, so we said, oh, when are we going to get another champion? And bang, the next year. So I think if you look hard enough and you work hard enough, as I said to you, if you work the sales and really look hard, you can find them.
Glenn, we were talking a little bit earlier about buying policy. Now, I had this conversation with Vaughan, and you alluded to a little bit earlier about buying powers of the big stables and stock coming through the door. And obviously, as a trainer, that's an integral part to competing. So one thing that, as like a bloodstock person from the outside looking in, you've always, despite not having the biggest bang for your buck necessarily in terms of budget, you've always managed to buy top-level horses that compete with everybody else's, punching above your weight in terms of, you know, in terms of net spend of horses and results on the track. Your buying policy, are you a big specimen man? Do you look at the female lines? Are you stallion driven? What is your policy when you go to the sales and you pick up that book and you say, okay, I'm going to go and buy these type of horses? And as well, do you 99% of the time have you lined up a buyer for them? Are you a spec guy and phone calls afterwards? Take us through your yearling sale procedure.
Look, I think, most of my buying that I've ever done over the years has always been on spec, but I do believe there's a window period that you can sell. You can only sell in the first 2 days and then it's closed. If you don't sell that horse in the first 2 days, you're going to battle to sell it. So from the time the fall of the hammer, we have a media team that is on it all the time, sending the emails out to everybody, showing them what we've bought. A lot of the guys say, look, I'm in for a share, show me what you got. And it's quite nice doing it that way. It's nice doing it that way, and it's also difficult because if they don't come in, you're in trouble. But I must say we've got a very big clientele. Probably one of the biggest in all the racing yards, I would think, when you speak to the vets and you speak to everybody, the jeepers, you know, you've got a very big clientele because we put a lot of guys together. Probably our biggest owners are our breeders. I mean, they support us really well. Every year, Gaynor Rupert sends me some beautiful fillies, so does Susan Rout. And I've just got a beautiful filly from Aventure. So it's really nice to get support from the breeders. Lummis Kroll's given me one or two now, which is really nice. I like to buy a young mare before she's made it, because the champion usually comes in the first 4 foals, and as soon as it throws a bull black type, the horse goes up to another level. So I like to buy well-related fillies. They can be unraced, they can be unplaced, as long as they're assisted to a half-decent a filly that's got some bull black type in the second dam. And that's sort of like my secret, but I think really you've got to do the legwork.
Yeah.
If you don't do the legwork, and you can't be blinkered and go on certain stallions, because you know, the female lines are very, very influencing, I think.
Yeah, if you go according to stallions, you're going to miss a lot of good horses. That's
100%,
for sure.
absolutely. I mean, some guys say, oh, we're not touching that stallion. Well, that's where I'm going to look, because then they're going to be cheaper.
Yeah.
And every stallion gets good, you know, he'll get his shot at some good mares. Whether he makes it or not is another story, but he'll still produce a good horse from a good mare. And that's been our policy. And I really like a horse that, as he walks in the box, I either like him or I don't like him. I'm not going to make, not because of his pedigree that you start liking. It doesn't work like that with me. And the other thing is, I don't care how well bred he is, if he hasn't got a big bold eye, I don't buy him. I think the window to the horse's heart is through his eye. You know, and if he's got a big, bright, honest eye, he'll give you, if he's got any ability, he'll give it to you. That's just what my boss taught me, Rolf Rickson. He said, you know, the ones with the piggy eyes, the small heart, doesn't matter how well bred they are, they never run. And I've stuck to that policy, and it hasn't really let me down.
Fantastic. And then obviously that goes in hand with what we're going to talk about now, which was your season at large last season. You, I remember opening up an email to an article, I think it was in the Turf Talk, and the big headline was, Glen Kotzen states, I've got the best 2-year-old crop of my career I'm taking to Durban, or something along those lines. And knowing Glen, I thought that was a very Glen Kotzen statement, because you are positive about your horses. And the best thing is time went and backed your judgment up, because you had an exceptional season with your 2-year-olds in Natal this year, and obviously that's part of now your sophomore 3-year-old crop, which will go into the bigger races, which we'll touch on later. But hand in hand with your buying policy, I mean, let's start with the fillies. Amina was a filly who did really, really well for you. Obviously a talented horse by your main chances, Quasio, who has his fertility issues and hasn't had big numbers, but he's certainly done well with the small amount of runners he's had. And just tell us how you bought her.
Yeah, look, she came up on an online sale, and online sales were relatively new to everybody. And you know, to buy a horse on an online sale, you can't buy it unseen. You know, not on a photograph, because they can Photoshop it, they can film the horse looking down, looking up, and they look bigger. So I looked at the pedigree, I said, gee, she's got an amazing female line. There was talk that Quasilla's had a couple of winners, and I'm in for a freshman sire, beautifully bred. See the stars, half brother to Karari. So I thought, geez, you know, if this is nice, this will be a good buy. And so I jumped in the car, went and had a look at it in the paddock. They said, do you want to walk her? They sort of like dragged her up and down the paddock. She just was an absolute baby, not prepped, anything. And she had everything that I liked in her. She had size, scope. She like really stepped really well. And what I find, it's just another trait that I like a longer pattern than normal. I just think they give them that extra reach. Yeah, some of them can go wrong, but all the top stallions throw a longer pattern. And anyway, I thought, well, I'll see what she goes for, because I'm addicted to sales. So I pressed the button, $5,000, bang, I got it for 5,000. Yeah, and then a client of mine phoned me up and said, look, I've got babies with you, but nothing running. Can't you sell me something that's going to run? I want to see my colours out. So I said, I got this beautiful filly, and I said, this is what's cost me to feed her. This is what I think she's worth. And she's running next week. You can get it. You're running your colours, and she'll win first amount. And she duly did. She won by 3.5. And then she went and won the Group 3, and then she won the Group 2. So she's a smart filly. She's a very smart filly.
One more horse that we definitely have to add to your roll of honour in terms of up there with the big city lives, Princess Victoria's, maybe not in racing ability. I mean, he was a proper Group 1 racing horse, but now that he's gone to stud, and he's doing fairly well with his progeny on the racetrack as well. And it's obviously still early days, and we can look forward to a lot more of his horses doing better as the months progress, and that is gold standard. I mean, he was a horse, we were talking about buying power. Now we can delude a little bit to Hugo, obviously, and Hugo was someone who came along, and he was someone who gave you a little bit of buying power at the sales, and you know, you more than greatly rewarded him with a lot of high-level performers. And Eyes Wide Open, Pack Leader, Gold Standard, obviously another one. He now finds himself at stud at Drachenstein, and you've got one or two of his progeny that can run, and that filly Hold My Hand is obviously one of the leading lights of that group. So just explain to us a little bit more about her.
Yeah, she's an awesome filly. I said to Kevin, can't I come and pick a gold standard? He said, 100%. So he pulled at all the gold standards, and we went down the line, and she was my top filly, and I managed to get her, and she's an awesome filly. She's just got the most beautiful temperament, but I think all the gold standards have got a really good temperament, a good head on them. We took her to Durban more for a holiday, and I said, if she comes right, she can have a run, and she got beat a shorthead first time out, a very impressive debut, and then she won by 5, and she went through a gap that wasn't there, and I said, geez, I like the heart that she's showing. And we ran straight into the Group 1 at the end of the season, and she came through to win, and it's like the horse came across, just probably one run short of having the experience of what to do, but a super run. She got beat less than a length, and on the day, Candice Bassett stepped out a beautiful filly, who was also on my list, but she apparently had an issue at the time. But she ran an incredible third, flying at them in the 1200, and I think had she run the mile, she might have been the horse that could have won it. So that's just 2 of the Gold Standards progeny. He's had, I think, about 9 individual winners, but I've been collecting them quietly because a lot of people, if they're not winning as 2-year-olds, they don't want to buy them. But he himself only won as a 3-year-old. You see, he had his first win as a 3-year-old, and they just take a little bit more time because you look at his female line, there's a lot of stamina there, and that's where all the big races are, and I think that you're going to see a lot more of Gold Standards.
Yeah, and in terms of that filly, that Drachenstein filly, Hold My Hand, you'd be looking at again the 3-year-old filly program. Would she be ready for the Western Cape Fillies Championship into the World Sports Betting Cape?
I chatted to Kevin Somerville, who's Gaynor's manager, and he said that it doesn't have to be set in concrete that we have to go for that race. So if you haven't got enough time, it's fine. We can go for a nice little pinnacle in between, or we can go softer route into the Guineas. We just got to play it by ear. But she's doing really well. She's more than likely. I'd like to gallop the filly really at Kenilworth. I'm waiting to see once they finish the spring treatment. The Durbanville track's firming up quite a bit, and if you can help it, you don't have to gallop your better ones there because they can jar up, and depending on how bad the jar is, it could knock you back further. So we rather want to go forward flowing. So that's what I'm hoping for. So if I do that, then I might miss the Group 2. It's coming up a bit quick, but hopefully we'll have a Mina there and one others.
Well, perfect. I mean, no rush. The 3-year-old filly program this summer has expanded because we'll have the inaugural running of the Cape Oaks, which is going to be on Derby Day, which is, it's probably a division which doesn't have huge amounts of depth. 10 furlong 3-year-old fillies in February, so that's probably a race you could look out for a few of those later coming ones. But you did well on both in both provinces with the juveniles. You had Spa Wing, who we'll talk about. She's a WSB Gold Rush candidate, and you obviously won the 1500 at the end of the season with Bonica. So you had the home fires burning very well here with your juveniles, and doing very well there obviously with cousin Casey, who ended up as a champion. Now moving into this season going forward, you've obviously seen all the major program and pattern changes and sponsorships and really raised prize money levels, and obviously we've got thrown into the mix as well the Gold Rushy race in its own entirety, which is a new concept and quite an exciting one. I mean, R7.5 million race. We were talking about your possible candidates for that, and Spywing obviously is one. And then you've always been a Visionnaire fan, and I know you were looking at buying a few Visionnaires, bearing in mind that he had now relocated to Lammaskraal, and coupled with what he had done before onto those female lines, which are obviously some of the best in the country. You went and raided a couple of them, and you've got, I think, 3 very good ones. Dowser, 4 very good ones. Dowser being one, Famous and Rich being another. So Imposing, who we've seen, you ran him in high-level races early on, obviously showing you a lot, and subsequently to that he's come out and delivered a few knockout victories. So those horses going for the Gold Rush and for the big races, what do you think of them? And I know it's impossible to put a pecking order through, but your program going forward, you're going to separate a few here and there and see where they go?
Yeah, well, look, when I go back to the Cape and you go to the races, ours are all in African horse sickness and having a break from the Natal season, and I see these big strapping horses being stepped out by all various yards. And then you start thinking, gee, you know, and then you watch them and yeah, one will win. Obviously there's going to be a winner. And then some fluff their lines and some reputations are damaged. But you know, I've got a really lovely young stock. You know, my son's best mate unfortunately passed before his horse could run. And Kyan now leases the horse from the estate. He's had 3 runs. He's run second, first. And I took him to the gallops yesterday just to have his first gallop. I think I'm more than likely to step him out, him and Dowser, take them to Port Elizabeth for that RA race. It's been a lovely race. It's been really good to me, and it's a nice race to bring them out after being fresh. You don't have all the top Cape horses in there, and the stake's quite decent. So probably use that as his for those 2 first, and those are the 2 are Gold Rush horses. Dowser beautifully bred on the dam side. He won his maidens by 5, and Richard Free said, geez, he really impressed him. He got into all sorts of trouble. His next start in a handicap, and but he's showed me enough to know that he'll run in the big races. He's a proper big, strong, strapping lad. And then we got Imposing, as you said. You know, things didn't go well in the features. He was taken out quite badly, but he's won 2 very smart races now, so he's quite smart. And we've got Blackberry Malt, who's a lovely little horse. At the moment, he holds the course record for his maiden at Scottsville. You know, he thumped their times, but he's a really smart horse by Ideal World. I think he's probably going to go the Cape Classic first. Maybe his first run there, straight out of the maidens. We're a little bit on the back foot because the horses got stuck in Natal with the African horse sickness, and so we had to get back, inject them, back off them, give them their break, and anyway, we hopefully will come out firing. And the last Visionnaire was champion 2-year-old. He's going to go for all the sprint races. Good Traveller, yeah. He's going to go, you know, he ran in all the group sprints, and there's some amazing prize money to be had now that with all the new sponsors upping
the sprint program in particular has had quite a bit of rejuvenation. There's a couple extra high money pinnacles that are just bridging the gap between the Cape Fly and the Diadem and the Cape Merchants, which is I think being run for 450,000, which is pretty good money for a handicap.
Yeah.
But yeah, fantastic. We wish you all the best, Glenn. Thank you for taking your time out. You know, coming out to Woodhill is really fantastic. I know your big band of clients and owners enjoy it, and I'm sure it's played an integral role in helping you build your business. And I think to any of our viewers who are watching, who are avid owners and racegoers who haven't made a trip out here, should contact your team, and maybe you can get them out here and show them a few horses, and it definitely helps bring people back into the game of ownership, which is what we're looking to do. And I must say, personally, congratulations for a fantastic season of 2-year-olds last year. It was unbelievable. Hopefully, Touchwood, all is good with your big horse. We saw him, he looks phenomenal, fresh, unbelievable. And I think, personally, if that horse can win 1 or 2 more Group 1s, I think the lead-in and the post-race interviews with yourself and Ravi would be quite entertaining to watch. Hopefully you both keep your shirts on, but it's going to be a good season, and good luck to you. This is the big horse, Cousin Casey, Equus champion 2-year-old. Give us a little bit of insight into when you spotted him at the yearling sales. Obviously we know it's a family close to your heart, but what is it about them that led you to buy him? And just introduce us into how Ravi got into the horse.
Yeah, so first of all, we'll start off with Ravi. I met Ravi through Gaynor Syndicate. We were in the parade ring one day, and he arrived at races for a syndicate runner, and we were chatting, and he said, look, the national sales are coming up. He said, if you spot a nice colt, I'm looking to run 1 or 2 of my own colours, and we can chat. And obviously I had gone to all the farms, and then he was bred in the Eastern Cape, so we obviously mark our catalogue off and look at pedigrees that we really like. But I always find that the sleepers always, you've got to look at everything. You can't. The harder you work, I think the luckier you become. He was always on the short list. We bred his mother here at Woodhill, and all the sisters have been unbelievable. And as you know, family's always good trainers. Yeah. But when I first saw him, I said, oh, he's too nice. I said, I'm not going to be able to afford him because Versailles is flying already. But somehow he slipped through the system. He's not the biggest horse. When we bought him, you could barely look over the door. He's a late November foal. I think that his feet flared a little bit, which didn't make him look great, but it was all good.
And he was knocked down for?
We got him for four. We went over our budget. I think we got him for 375.
Okay, around there.
Um,
So it's a fair number to spec.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So, but the best part was when I looked for Ravi, he had disappeared. So I phoned him and said, where is he? I'm buckling in. The plane's about to take off. I said, don't let the plane take off. You've got to buy this colt. So it's hard on the phone to do that.
Yeah.
Especially when Ravi's one bid behind.
Yeah.
And saying stop, and we've already got the bid. So no, but it was great. So we got the colt, and then the best part about him was. We sent him to the Karoo. He got stuck in the Karoo because the horse got African horse sickness in the Karoo. So we had to spend a couple of more months. And of course, it's cold and they're not being groomed every day. But John Slade did a fantastic job of looking after the horses. They're stabled every night, blanket. I said, please, try and keep the coats good. But still, when he arrived, Ravi came and said he had a little bit of buyer's remorse because he looked small and woolly and what happened to him? I said, no, this is what happens. They're going to be let down a bit. But the rest is history. I tried to run him in the 2 feature sprints to give Ravi his first feature race winner, but they were just a bit quick for him. And
when did he start showing you at home where you thought, oh, we could have something here? Was it early on from day one?
Day one. And I always believe, late foals, they're the first one we break in. We break our late foals in first because they got the most catching up to do. Because there was a whole article once written where they said, do late foals ever catch up? Well, they don't if you don't allow them to. So we believe the late foals have got the most growing to do, they've got the most growth spurt. And as soon as you break them in and exercise them and just get the constant exercise, the growth is just unbelievable. And they catch up to the early foals very, very quickly. So he is a late November foal. And when he got to Natal, he was unbeaten. So once we went around the bend, he won the 4 in a row and the rest is history.
Yeah, he looks like, obviously as a student of form, I personally can't remember a 2-year-old as impressive as him since, those days when Mark had those Australian horses like Monsieur, etc. He's just been super, super impressive. So you originally planned to possibly go straight into what is now the Hollywoodbets Cape Guineas, which obviously there's been a lot out in the press recently. The cash up for these 3-year-old races has doubled in a lot of cases. Hollywoodbets Cape Guineas now worth 2 million. The Selling Cup is usually the Guineas trial that people go for, which is now $500,000. So what are you looking at program-wise if Touchwood everything goes smoothly?
Yeah, okay, so we've had to up his work. He's just getting impossible. He's just so fresh. He is a very fresh horse. Very relaxed, great temperament, but you can do anything into the box. But when he's out there, you saw him now, he can really freshen. You always have the chance of him getting loose. So yeah, we've upped his work, and I spoke to Ravi, and originally we had pre-drinks before the awards, and Ravi and Grant and myself were chatting, and the first thing Grant said, go straight into the Guineas, don't go anywhere else. Look, he's already qualified, so we can sit back and take our time. There are colts that are running now that are going to be trying to qualify to get into the Guineas, and obviously will, but they'll be on the boil for a long time. Yeah. So I think we freshened him up. He's had his break. He's really done exceptionally well. And we're possibly going to go for the Concord Cup. I think that's going to be our first run, Guineas second run, and then the Derby the third run. That's sort of like the golden rule. And if we're planning on going to the July, we'd keep him against the 3-year-olds, and then we'd go.
So no temptation for Lormeran's King's Plate or anything like that if he blows them away in the Guineas. You'd rather maybe go the 10 furlong of the Derby.
I think he'll love the 10 furlong. I think that's what he's crying out for. And the beauty about him is that you can switch him off and he just cruises. And then when he kicks, he's got a good kick. So I think that's not a problem. We obviously, it's all open to discussion as the races go, because one of the guys spoke to me and they said, are you going to go for the Met? I said, no, my owner is a Natal boy, born in Natal. July is what we're aiming for. So if we go Met, we expose him against the older horses. We'd rather keep him as he's the highest rated horse at the moment, or the second or third highest rated 2-year-old. So rather keep him to his own age group, and we still can sneak into the July with a bottom weight if we stick to the 3-year-old races. So it'll all depends how it goes. If we get excited and there's nothing really popping out in Cape Town, maybe the Queen's Plate Met, who knows? It's races we'd love to win. Yeah. But the original plan is stick to the 3-year-old races, go for the July. Yeah,
and it's a long plan, but also it's a good story with Ravi. It shows you how you know, you can find these type of owners out of the syndicates that people are putting together, which is always great for the game. You know, I think that's generally where you go with these ideas, and then hopefully you pick up a few big fish along the way. But good luck. Let's hope Touchwood all goes smoothly and he does well for you and Robbie.
Yeah, thank you very much.